This kind of green scam is at the end of its days. I think they've run their course and it's meant to have a certain expiration date on it. And I think that expiration date overlaps with disclosure into what you consider electrogravitics and magnetic motors.
And we have aliens invading from 2020 to 2024. Then you have Trump coming in and deporting them back to their extra land, extraterrestrials, aliens, back to their extra land. He's defeated the aliens. And that's the way that I think a lot of the stuff works, Dave. It's all wordplay, it's word magic, and because that's the way that people talk about the alien invasion, right? That the aliens are going to come and invade, and then we're going to push them back, and then we're going to reveal the technology. Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone here today. Today we have David Dubine returning from Adapt 2030 channel. Welcome back to the show, Davis. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm on the road here in Taiwan, earthquake central, man. I have experienced more earthquakes in these last 5-6 days. It's been rumbling here, like, 6.0 and then 5.8, 4.8, 4 point. It's just like lots of quakes. And it's the year of the snake, by the way, for everybody out there keeping track. It's the year of the wood snake. So if you want to take a look at your like what year were you born, which year of the animal were you born in the Chinese zodiac, you can overlay the wood snake with yourself and see what type of animal interaction you're going to get. And I did pull up some stuff for predictions here out of Hong Kong, SPLC, for the crypto market, that sort of thing. It's a snake. So there's going to be a lot of twists and turns this year. That's the whole thing about the year of the snake. Like sometimes, like a horse, it just gallops straight with different types of energies, right? So you get, I'm very sure they mapped out the energies of the heavens. So the snake, think about a snake, like how does it twist and turn and go underground, above ground, in the trees, down on the ground? That's kind of what you can expect for markets, personal relationships, opportunities, high points, low points. The year is going to be not just a single static, like flat energy, like some of the animal signs are in the zodiac, but it's going to be one of twists and turns. So get ready. It's going to be an interesting year.
You're currently in Taiwan, and you were recently in Tokyo, and I'm actually headed to Japan this year, and I'm really excited about it. I've never been outside of the United States, and I've talked to several people that have been to Japan, and they're completely blown away by how sophisticated they are and how it seems like they have fixed a lot of the problems that other countries in the world deal with. Everyone that I've talked to that's been there says that pretty much everything is way more efficient. Transportation's more efficient, living arrangements more efficient, cheaper prices on housing, cheaper food prices for the most part, and most importantly, they feel like the government actually cares about them, and that a majority of the companies that people work for are really good to their staff. Like some companies will literally give like newly like maternity leave, like for a new mother, maternity leave for a year with 80% of their pay monthly. And those types of things are the way that it's supposed to be, I believe. I mean, that's common sense, but the US is ridiculously backwards. I mean, just with that example of maternity leave, you're lucky to get off a week in the United States on maternity leave.
Never get left out in the cold. There is never a reason to ever let you or your family suffer. InstaFire and Civilization Cycle are on a mission to make fire starting and off-grid living easy for everyone. You shouldn't have to be a mountain man to strike a flame and make a fire anytime, anywhere.
comes down to the homogeneousness of the society. And I know that's like a walking on eggshells, broken glass, and lava topic at the same time in America. But these countries, you need to come out here. These countries that are homogeneous of 98, 99, 97% of a single culture, race, and belief system that are united by that core belief, value, and being of the same bloodline and lineage, there's different rules that apply. Things can go over to a certain pendulum swing, but once it starts to upset the society too greatly, it is absolutely removed with the full appreciation and thankfulness of the society to remove the threat that would destabilize the society. But in ours, like you said, okay, so to take and also they get their positions back right away. Same pay, they come back. This is Taiwan also, once you have a child, because a lot of these countries are experiencing very low birth rate. So instead of trying to import just non-equivalent people into there that don't have the same beliefs, that aren't of the same ethnicity, they would prefer to have their own children and keep the society homogeneous. Where in the States, we're like, oh, who cares? We'll just import somebody else from a different country and whatever. It's very different. Same in Taiwan. And China, too, is experiencing incredibly low birth rates. So they're actually giving preferential treatment to families to have more children. Like you get a bonus, for example. And it's not like our welfare bonuses where somebody's on their fifth child still filling out checks to get more money from the state. It's very different. Just try to look into it in a society that does not care about any homogeneousness. The rule of law used to be the shopkeeper. One thing I realized in Japan, the shopkeepers are very much the street enforcers, and they are allowed to enforce law on the street. That's the next step and stopgap between the police needing to be called out is the local communities policing their own local communities. And there's none of this like, oh, you can't beat that person, they're from a different country. Oh, you can't hog tie that person because they were going to destroy a building or cause damage. Oh, you violated their rights. Oh, they're different color. Oh, you didn't. Nothing like this. Somebody's in there to cause nefarious actions. Anybody in the neighborhood can take them down. And especially the street theft stuff, the shopkeepers are allowed to actually whoop the tar out of them and then call the police. Like it's very much a local, it's the opposite of what we have. We have way too big government in America trying to micromanage everything down at the street level. And that between that and the street level, just there's a huge vacuum that occurs. Crime's rampant. You can't do anything about it. There's so many states. If you try to stop a thief, you're the one who will go to jail for stopping them. But excuse me, here in Asia, it's the opposite. It's like the street level going back up. If you're going to talk about the pyramid of control, you're allowed to enforce your own street laws here and keep that place safe. You talked about Japan. It is so safe to walk anywhere at any time of the night. Same in Taiwan. I never felt threatened even once, anywhere. China, the same. Thailand, a little different because it just operates different. There's millions and millions and millions of tourists and people are all, tweaking and getting drunk all the time and just really just like partying too much down there. So it's a little bit different, but like Malaysia is another one. You don't mess around in Malaysia. Singapore, you don't mess around there too. Like there's very strict sets of rules where this is why a lot of these cultures have stayed together, remain powerhouses, aren't fracturing. And the only problem they're having is not having enough children. So when you swing it back again, like there's things that are allowed to change in the society as, society moves forward with technology and stuff. But there are very hard, fast rules that have always been and always will be. And those never change. And that wiggle room in the middle is what we call our modern era. But I really like the way that they are allowed to stop the threat of something that is going to destabilize their country or their neighborhoods or their cities or their culture without being admonished or arrested or thrown under the bus for being this, that, or the other label that we've given everybody for stopping crime. I give them high praise for that because you're a Western tourist and you come and try to mess around and be like, oh, I'm from America. I can do what I want in your little country. No, you can't. You're going to get put in your place so fast when you wake up in that jail cell and you're going to call your embassy to get you out because you tried to like take something off a street vendor and run and they all cornered you and whooped you to death almost. Then you're going to realize that the same rules don't apply overseas. There's a whole different world out here. And once you start exploring it, you start to realize how defunct and broken the United States is.
No, it's just interesting. I mean, just with transportation, because from my understanding, again, I've never been there. I don't know how everything operates, but I'm planning on going there this year. But just with transportation, it seems way more efficient. Like bullet trains there, they get you to where you need to be like really quickly. And it blows my mind that the United States hasn't implemented anything like this. Like we're still just driving around in cars when a lot of people in Japan use public transportation. I don't even think that, again, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't been there. I don't think very many people in Japan, like the common everyday person, has a vehicle because they don't need a vehicle.
That's true. And the trains run down to the minute on the schedule. If your train says it'll be at 7:20 in the morning and you rock in at 7:23, your train's already gone. Like you have to wait for the next one. And a lot of them are seated trains, right? So you have to, if you don't have a seat, then you have to go back to the station, turn in your ticket, get a new seat allocation if they have or whatnot. And I'll tell you one thing. So being in Taipei, they have, I think, about 15 different underground or what you call, subway lines. Up in Japan and Tokyo, there's 200. I mean, the vastness of the network is so mind-boggling. When I looked at that, you have got to be, that is a fraction of a little square on the bottom, what would be just the Taipei system, which is one of the most advanced in Asia, the widest reaching, and that is just a fraction of what Tokyo is. And you talk about getting people somewhere efficiently, and I'll agree with you, not a lot of people have cars. It's really expensive. So, for example, here, this is in Taiwan, not Japan. A friend of mine bought a house down near the University District, down near, or Taiwan University, excuse me. And the parking space alone, to buy the parking space in the parking garage, they already bought the apartment above, but to buy the parking space associated with that apartment above cost $97,000 for the parking space. And then people rent these parking spaces out. It's an investment. So people go around like you, just as you and I, we might buy a property and then want to flip it property. Well, here in Asia, buying parking spaces and just holding on to them until a district becomes much more popular and then selling that or renting that parking space is a big business here. I mean, you're spending upwards of 100 grand literally in the size where you can park a car. And then they have the automated ones that are multi-story tall underground. You pull your car in and then it drops on a conveyor belt. And then it's slotted off somewhere. And then AI pulls it back in when you put your number back in. Ooh, here comes your car again. It's really intriguing to see what they've done with the lack of space. Like in America, we almost have unlimited space. So everything just keeps going out and out and out. Well, a lot of these places, you can't go anymore out. It's an island or there's, some sort of border to another country, and then it kind of stops. So you're going to have your mind blown when you come out. It's absolutely going to shift your full waking reality when you have a chance to see what it's like outside the States versus what our brainwashing machine has told us. America, number one. When you come out here, you're going to see America maybe like, definitely not number one, way down the list somewhere in there. And especially with the inflation and all these other things too, you're going to start to see that what we've been told and fed at home is definitely not the way it really is.
Which is so interesting. I think some people are really getting an idea about China because of the TikTok ban. They ended up downloading this app called Red Note, which is 100% controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. But
that's super popular here too. That is massively popular here.
I think a lot of people got a wake up call of like how much we were kind of lied to about China and this idea of what we think, China is about whenever they got in there and see nothing but Chinese people uploading and figuring out a bunch of different things. And I was like, oh, wow, this is kind of like a cultural shock as well.
You go to, let's say, Myrtle Beach, that just got an enormous amount of record snow, or you go to Charleston, South Carolina, record snow. You go to any strip mall, mini mall, it's going to be almost exactly the same as you get out to California. Like the homogeneousness of our country too, in terms of business. But then when you come out here, and I will say a lot of the mom and pop shops got wiped out during COVID, but prior to that, everything was pretty much small businesses that made it run. Yeah, you had a couple Costco's and you had a few other things, but I would say it was upwards well over 80% of small business owners that allowed the country to function with the things you needed to buy on the daily life times of things. Not so much furniture, but anything else, anything for the house, anything for food, cleaning supply, anything that you think that would be sort of a daily use thing. It was predominantly supplied by mom and pop businesses. Now, since walking around in Japan as well and here in Taiwan, a lot of those businesses are out of business. It was just travesty the way our world got that wealth transfer happening under the guise of something else during that time, like closing all the small businesses, but allowing the bigs to stay open. Like Costco, for example, the local supermarket where I was living in Knoxville, small ethnic supermarket, they had all kind of things from, Southeast Asia, Indian subcontinent, Africa. They had all kind of crazy good stuff. Europe, they had this uh, Spanish, and then they also had the Moroccan olive oil. It was one of the only places you could get Moroccan olive oil, and that place had to close. But then the supermarket, the IGA, and that sort of thing, and Costco right across the street, and Sam's down the road, they were allowed to stay open. And that supermarket never came back. That was one of my favorites because you could get like some crazy good spices in there. Closed forever. They're never coming back. So our country's going into hyperinflation. Out here, the reason we're doing this program today is I sent Ryder a message when I was in Japan. The food in restaurants to go out to eat is cheaper in Japan than it is to eat out in America. And the quality of food, is just far higher quality. And that was the second time I've been shaken awake by that. And I found Italy last year, it was cheaper to go eat out in a restaurant with higher quality, what you consider Italian foods, than it was to eat in just some regular burger joint in America to go out. Shocking. So what you think your prices are in America, yeah, we're getting hyperinflation. As soon as you step out, your dollar buys way more outside than what it does in the States.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well is, compared to the American dollar, but I'm not 100% sure if the amount of money that they make in Japan equals out to the exact same amount of inflation that they would be getting there, or you know what I mean? So I don't know.
I don't have that answer. I know exactly what you mean, but I don't have that answer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that because normally when you're getting paid a certain amount, it would probably still be highly inflated for them because they're getting a certain amount, just like it's highly inflated for us because minimum wage has stayed the same almost throughout everywhere. So
Yeah,
I don't really
that's
know.
true. Yeah, the inflation is gripping the planet. Don't get me wrong. But it just seems that with the exchange rate that we have, and I get it, a lot of it is tied to exchange rate, but a lot of it's just tied to direct inflation. And it seems the same phenomenon's happening. I can't find very many countries where the wages are outpacing the inflation. I just don't see it. It seems the opposite is true in almost every single country. But with that said, how is it that you can go to some of what were considered the most expensive places in the world and still have that be cheaper to eat out in a restaurant than it would be to eat in just give me a common restaurant chain, not like a McDonald's or anything, but uh, give me a restaurant chain that might be in the States that's just sort of like hamburgers, like Five Guys or something,
Chick-fil-A,
or
Chick-fil-A.
I'm trying to think of some other one, the Olive Garden, maybe something like that.
Mm.
You're eating like proper Italian food, having a full bottle of wine and all kind of thing for the same price that you were getting for just your regular bargain meal or a nighttime special. Because it's really difficult to find. Like for me, where I live in a small town, there's got a couple of restaurants along the river. And when I first moved to that place, you could get in there and get a hamburger for like $8, big, huge thing of fries, have a couple beers with that, and you walked out for under $20, right? Now you can't even touch that same hamburger. It's like $14.13.99 for that same hamburger. And that's just in a regular, sit down kind of fun restaurant. It's right on the river, or I should say big creek coming out of the Smoky Mountains. There's a little swimming hole there and a lot of people pull in with motorbikes and things like that. But just even that, and that is considered not so expensive compared to going out some places in like Nashville, for example. That is way more expensive than eating out in a restaurant in Japan or a restaurant in Italy. That's what I'm getting at, is even with like a regular nice burger place, or steak slash salad serving place, is way cheaper by 20 to 30% easily to eat out in other nations versus our own. So what's going on with the inflation at home here?
Are the portions are a lot smaller though, right?
I'm finding that not really. We have gone through the shrinkflation thing to try to battle with the inflation first by shrinking our portion sizes. And anybody who goes out to eat will absolutely know what I'm talking about. Especially, I'll bring you back to that same example when I first moved down to this small town. Like when you got an order of fries next to a burger, it covered a good majority of the plate. It was like a stack of fries. Now it's just like a few of them dribbled on the side. I would ask everybody out there listening, do you think the portion sizes that you're getting when you eat out, do you think it's smaller than it was 5 years ago? Or do you think you're getting the same amount of massive American portions? I don't think so. Everybody did shrinkflation first to try to disguise the price rises before they couldn't, brush that under the rug anymore by shrinking the size. Well, they finally actually had to raise the price of the base ingredient, like the beef patties or the whatever it would be.
I mean, like in Japan, the portion sizes whenever you or other countries, I don't think, again, haven't been there, but from what I've heard, is that they are smaller in portions than the portions that we get if we go out to a restaurant here. They're much larger here than they are in other countries like Japan and like Taiwan.
I would have agreed with you 5 years ago. Absolutely smashingly different sizes. But after all the restaurants had to compensate for the rising prices, they keep shrinking the size of what you consider an American meal plate size. That has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller to where it is nearly equivalent of what you're getting out in other nations now. That's the whole thing. That balance reoccurred. Before, I'll agree, you had something stacked to the Himalaya on the plates for American portions. But now, that's been knocked down to what you consider regular size. They're really cutting down into the food wastage in the restaurants now. So I'm going to say maybe 10% more size but when you walk away out of a restaurant, you're still full. It's not like you walk out, like some French restaurant where they gave you something that's like the size of a, thimble for your main dish, where you got to eat a bunch of those. But beyond that, I think it's very close, pretty close.
Interesting. See, I'm kind of scared to go to Japan because I'm super tall.
Oh man, you're going to be so stoked there.
I'm 6'5", and I'm afraid that
oh, you'll get through. Just watch your head. I'm 6'4". I'm always very leery of my head when I go through things. When you're going through doorways.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
You'll smash your head a few times before you get it. Believe me. I'll leave it like on the floor, almost cowering, like, that I just break my brain.
Yeah, I've heard some of the shops are kind of tiny. Some of the living quarters are really tiny. I want to go to these UFO hotels. Have you heard about these? I think they're abandoned now, but because they didn't go over and they didn't get to build them all. But I believe this is in Japan. Yes, yeah, Tokyo Fox.
Yeah, it could be. But see, when you come over here in Japan, so like really jumping in the deep end, because not a lot of people speak English once you get outside Tokyo. So you're gonna have to use a translation app. Because a lot of other countries do speak much more English across Asia than Japan.
I want some of that UFO ramen.
Those ramen noodle things, I think, are about $2 now for one of those ramen.
Heck yeah, UFO ramen, dude! Get abducted by the ramen.
Yeah, I think they're like $1.50 or $2 for that. I don't eat that kind of stuff. So, but I do remember seeing it all over the supermarkets.
I would
get like a whole aisle of just like instant noodle stuff.
Yeah, UFO ramen, baby! I want some of that.
Yeah, get that. Now, speaking of the tech, I'm wondering, with all this disclosure, I think you and I touched on this last time. Are they going to bring out this, antigravitics technology and 0 point and parented magnetic motor technologies? Because, looking at the minerals that are still needing to be mined from now to 2030, even now to 2035, we have to double the copper supply of all the copper that's ever been mined on the planet in the last 4,000 years. That amount needs to be mined and refined in the next 10 years for all these green agendas to go forward. And that's just real simple copper. But then when you get in all these rare earth minerals, like lithium, for example, so far we've mined 1.2 million tons. They need to bring that up to 1.5 million tons over the next year. That's just not happening. So I think that we've been bait and switched green deal because Trump's pulling us out of the climate accords. And I am wondering if all this was just a wealth transfer as well, that it was a scripted play to bring us to this point, knowing that we would literally drop off a cliff, knowing there wouldn't be enough metals. And suddenly the disclosure happens at the exact same time to bring us into a completely different system that will relegate all those to the dustbins of history. Because I just did a video on Storm Ewan that ran over Ireland and the UK off the west side. They had to close down all their wind off there, and the gas-fired power plants needed to turn back on. And that move alone cost every person on the line that was there, cost them 48 pounds extra because they got hit with a carbon tax because of the gas-fired generation. And I did not know the contractual agreements with the UK is the wind farm operators get paid when they turn off their wind generation, because they don't want to damage the blades in high wind, because it overload the grid. Like if they were to leave it on, possibility of damage, yes, but possibility in a lot of the peripheral areas would be screaming at like 50, 60 mile an hour winds and it wouldn't get to the hurricane range. That all those in unison spinning at max capacity would overload the grid with input. But there's some kind of smoothing load mechanism balancing. When there's too much energy produced from the windmills, they need to turn it off. So then every time they do this maneuver, this Rubik's Cube of, we got to turn all the wind production off along the West Coast, they need to fire up the gas. But all that, there's a fee for the wind companies because it's like a nuisance fee for them to have to turn it off. They get paid a certain fee by the government. Having no production, they get paid the equivalent of what they would have produced, even though they're not producing. And then the consumer gets hit with a carbon tax because they're using natural gas. So the consumer gets hit with 3 different charges every time, they come into a large wind event where they need to shutter all wind operations. So this kind of green scam is at the end of its days. And I can see why everybody's pushing so like ferociously now, because I think this is the last time that they're going to have to either launder the money or to like make prices rise in stocks or whatever green end of things are before it collapses. I think they've run their course, and it's meant to have a certain expiration date on it. And I think that expiration date overlaps with disclosure into what you consider electrogravitics and magnetic motors, meaning we don't have to burn anything again.
Yeah, I have a really interesting theory on the reason for them not releasing the free energy in the craft when it comes to like aliens and stuff, because free energy has kind of been tied with extraterrestrials and aliens in this community for a really long time. People have been talking about this alien invasion stuff, and you've been outside of the country a lot. You're currently in Taiwan. You were just in Japan. And if you go into a country that you're not a citizen of, you're considered an alien, right? You would technically be an alien. You're not from that country. And when you break down the word extraterrestrial, it just means extra land, extra terra. Terra is a Latin word for earth. So extra terra, extraterrestrial, just means extra land on earth. And we have aliens invading from 2020 to 2024. Then you have Trump coming in and deporting them back to their extra land, extraterrestrials, aliens, back to their extra land. He's defeated the aliens. And that's the way that I think a lot of this stuff works, Dave. It's all wordplay, it's word magic. They tell you one thing when they mean something completely different. And that's what I 100% believe is going on. And because that's the way that people talk about the alien invasion, right? That the aliens are going to come and invade, and then we're going to push them back, and then we're going to reveal the technology. Well, that seems to be sort of exactly like what's happening right now at this very moment. I mean, there's been several people that's been talking about that free energy is getting ready to be released, which I really don't know. I have no idea. People have been saying that for a really long time. I hope it's true. I hope that we do it. I hope that we actually have the technology, which in all accounts, we definitely have anti-gravity technology. I 100% believe that 95% of the things that we see in the sky is our own technology.